Welcome to the Freak Show, fellow freaks.
I am Matthew Brockmeyer.
And I'm Christa Carmen.
And this is...
Murder Coaster.
Ladies and gentlemen, does life imitate art? Or does art imitate life? It is an age-old question, and today we present to you a case which has made this debate a fierce one, as 4 innocent people were bludgeoned to death with an axe in what has variously been called the Myspace Killings and the Farmville Murders. Some blame music and the culture of horrorcore, a transgressive form of hip-hop, saying it glorifies violence. Others say the music is only a reflection of society. It is the story of an outcast boy who, when denied love, turned to murder. A boy named Richard McCroskey, who made music under the name Syko Sam.
Let's begin. Prologue: The House of Slaughter. For days, Farmville, Virginia police had been getting frantic calls from a mother who said she hadn't heard from her daughter after she'd gone to a concert with a friend and spent the night at her house. And although officers had been to the stately colonial home on 505 First Avenue several times already, once for a welfare check, another to investigate strange sounds coming from the basement, they had never entered the house itself. Until finally, on September 18th, 2009, at 3 p.m., officers entered the unlocked house and were immediately greeted with the horrid stench of death. They discovered what they called, quote, a slaughterhouse.
There were 4 dead in the home. Reverend Mark Niederbrock, 50, and his ex-wife, Dr. Deborah Kelly, 53, their 16-year-old daughter, Emma, and her 18-year-old friend, Melanie Wells. They'd been bludgeoned to death with a wood-splitting maul, a heavy type of axe. The bodies so disfigured, dental records were needed to identify them.
After the killer murdered them with an axe, he'd spent days in the home as the corpses began to rot around him, smoking cigarettes and weed, drinking energy drinks and beer, moving the bodies about and making videos, before stealing Reverend Niederbrock's car and taking off, still drenched in blood. And as a taxicab driver would later state, stinking like the devil.
It was the killer's own friend, Andre Shrim, who went by Sicktanic the Soulless in the underground world of horrorcore rap music, who turned the killer in, telling police the killer was a 20-year-old aspiring musician named Richard McCroskey, who rapped under the moniker Syko Sam.
And of course, investigators quickly raced to find out who this horrorcore rapper Syko Sam was, what had led to the horrible slaughter, and most importantly, where he was now.
Chapter 1: Little Richard.
Richard Alden McCroskey III was born on December 26, 1988, in Hayward, California. He had a sister named Sarah, who was 2 years older than him.
The family moved about the Bay Area before finally settling in the Castro Valley in 2003.
Sarah would later say, quote, "We weren't a Leave It to Beaver type of family."
Growing up, Although his father is said to have been a rock and roll guitarist, Richard says he actually hated music, saying whenever he heard music, he'd get irritated and annoyed, no matter what the genre.
Richard hated the sound of music so badly as a child that he broke the speakers on his parents' stereo.
All of which is absolutely crazy to me, as I'm a huge music lover, all types, from jazz to death metal, everywhere in between, and I can't imagine a life without music. It's a solace and a balm. So I went down this crazy rabbit hole trying to figure this hatred of music out. It appears music sensitivity, or musical anhedonia, is more common than I realized. Researchers have shown that it's the white matter connectivity in the auditory process of the brain, the tissue through which different areas in the central nervous system communicate, which is essential to why a person would like or dislike music, as it connects sound and harmony to the brain's reward structures.
Severe musical sensitivity often appears with children on the autism spectrum, and it can also be associated with other neurological conditions, such as depression, which often correlates with a lack of response to music. But it doesn't necessarily definitively point to either one of those. The condition may be linked to disruptions in the reward pathways in the brain, particularly in areas such as the nucleus accumbens, orbitofrontal cortex, and insula.
You know, I'm no psychologist, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But Richard may have been on the autism spectrum, as evidenced by his issues making eye contact. But I think it's obvious he was absolutely a very depressed person. And he also suffered from migraines. And eventually, with his brutal crimes that he'd laugh about, he would display a severe antisocial personality disorder.
But his hatred of music changed when he was 11 years old. A sudden and drastic switch when he actually became obsessed with music, and music became his life.
Richard says it happened when his father was driving him to the dentist, and he was playing him some music. Naughty music his mother didn't want him listening to. And something clicked. He says he just got it. Apparently the throbbing beat and screeching guitar sunk through the white matter of his brain and tapped his pleasure centers. And he just started digging the sound.
And that band was Korn.
Are you ready?
When the Korn CD was over, Richard's dad then played him ICP, or Insane Clown Posse.
Whoop, whoop.
Man, a good friend of mine in, middle school was obsessed with the Insane Clown Posse, and I remember going over to her house and listening to it and being like, this is so weird, but cool. And Richard's life was changed forever, unsurprisingly.
Who's down with the clown?
Richard loved the weird carnival sounds, horror movie atmosphere, and dark and twisted lyrics, and wanted to borrow the CD, but his dad wouldn't let him, as his mom was strict and didn't want him listening to that type of violent and misogynistic music. So Richard went and snuck the ICP CD, The Great Milenko, into his bedroom, and burned a copy on his computer, and it was all over.
Then he started going into ICP chat rooms and discovered the world of Horrorcore.
Chapter 2. Horrorcore.
blood, guts, death, horror, the fucker. Up on my head in the always target. Murder, blood, guts, death, horror, the fucker. Up on my head in the always target. Murder, blood, guts, death, horror, the fucker. Up on my head in the always target. Murder, blood, guts, death, horror, the fucker. Up on my head in the always target. Murder, blood, guts, death, horror.
Horrorcore is a hip-hop subgenre known for creepy sounds, occult and supernatural themes, and dark and often ultra-violent lyrics that started in the late 80s and early 90s with bands like the Ghetto Boys, Grave Diggers, Flatliners, Necro, and Cool Keith.
But the most successful and well-known horrorcore group is undoubtedly the Insane Clown Posse, with 2 platinum and 5 gold albums, and who have legions of fans called Juggalos.
Over the years, these guys have been super controversial, and they and their crazy fans just kind of seem to scare the shit out of people, really freak them out. In 2011, the FBI listed Juggalos as a gang. So ICP actually sued the FBI, saying their fans were being treated unjustly.
A 2017 Denver Police Department guide claimed that Juggalos were prone to commit, quote, murder, shootings, kidnapping, rape, necrophilia, cannibalism, assault, and arson, and that such acts give a Juggalo a sense of pride and street credit amongst peers, end quote. But they were unable to find any data to substantiate these claims at all.
Yeah, it seems like utter bullshit to me. Of course, any fan group of music is going to have some bad apples. And I'm not saying that their fans are all perfect choir boys or anything, but I've known a lot of Juggalos through the years, and they were all cool, man. In fact, they had this huge festival every year called the Gathering of the Juggalos that, although insane, crazy, wild, and often drug-fueled, is totally peaceful. The Juggalos, they see themselves as a big, happy family.
Celebrities like Charlie Sheen, albeit in his cocaine years, would show up and say he was down with the clown, as well as Tom Green and NBA star Chris Bosh.
And dude, George Clinton and P-Funk have played the Gathering of the Juggalos. And honestly, I've wanted to go just to view it as this cultural phenomenon, gonzo journalism and all that. And of course, I've always loved horror-inspired music. Of course I have. But when I was a kid, it was horror punk. The Misfits, Sam Hain, The Damned, The Cramps, even the Dead Kennedys. I loved all that horror punk shit. Still do.
And the truth is, horror has been a part of rock and roll since its very beginnings. In the early 1950s, there was Screaming Jay Hawkins, who'd pop out of a coffin on stage, brandish a bone through his nose, and cursed his crowds by waving a skull-topped voodoo stick over them, and whose hit, I Put a Spell on You, can still be heard on the radio today.
Love Screamin' Jay. And in 1962, there was the legendary song Monster Mash by Bobby Pickett, who'd pretend to be Boris Karloff. Total classic. Everyone knows that song.
In 1963, there was Screaming Lord Sutch, a British horror rock band who had a big hit with the song Jack the Ripper.
And of course, Black Sabbath, who got their name from an actual horror movie.
And Alice Cooper, who took horror rock to new levels, dancing with a boa constrictor and being decapitated live on stage.
Yeah, horrorcore was really nothing new. Now it was just being taken up by hip-hop and a whole new generation of young kids. And the ultra-violent lyrics that everyone freaked out about, they were no different than Glenn Danzig's lyrics for the Misfits, which were directly inspired by horror movies. And as horrorcore rapper Mars says, quote, if you take Stephen King or Wes Craven and you throw them on a rap beat, that's who I am.
But as for Richard McCroskey, he was already shy and introverted, chubby, pale, and red-headed with a weird haircut. And becoming a juggalo, obsessed with horrorcore music, didn't help him fit in at high school.
He was a loner who was relentlessly bullied, but he never fought back. Instead, he stowed it all inside. In his own words, becoming a ticking time bomb, ready to explode.
He dropped out of 10 in high school in Hayward, but then decided to make a go of it at Hayward High School. But he soon dropped out of there as well.
Richard did the typical angsty goth teen stuff, hung out in cemeteries, liked to pose with a hatchet like the ICP logo. He drank tons of Monster Energy drinks, collected underground CDs, hatchets and meat cleavers, and Jason Voorhees hockey masks. And despite being a high school dropout, he was a computer whiz and a very talented web designer, starting his own little company called Morbid Design.
He was also an excellent graphic designer. And of course, he was all about the internet. And it being the early 2000s, he was the Myspace kid, discovering a whole community there in the Insane Clown Posse chat room, where he went by the moniker Syko Sam, a name he derived from serial killer David Berkowitz, who called himself the Son of Sam.
Which is so sad, because as anyone who knows about David Berkowitz can tell you, he was such a pathetic, lonely, and just miserable person. The most pitiful of serial killers, really. Anyway, Richard's parents split up, his dad kicking his mom out of the house for reasons I couldn't seem to find. And Richard, at just 17, began writing and producing his own songs under the Syko Sam moniker and sharing them all on MySpace. Were you on MySpace?
Yep, I was on MySpace. I was never very good at it. That whole, everybody that got really good at doing, the code and shit and making your profile are all cool. That is, the opposite of my skill set to this day. I never understood it. I was like, I was always asking people for help with it, which is, the most annoying thing. But I remember it back in the old days of the internet. So the first song he put out was titled My Dark Side. And this was soon followed by songs like Infamy, Burning Churches, Murderous Rage, Sick Minds Think Alike, and The Voices. He found he was really accepted in horrorcore MySpace scenes, where he started making a name for himself in the tiny underground world.
And he loved to travel and would take the bus down to Southern California to hook up with other horrorcore musicians like DSK, who made most of the beats that Richard would rap over, and other friends like Big Dog, Bloodshot, Skinny Sick, and Sinister. And he did the graphics for Wicked Intent Records.
Then he hooked up with Andre Shrim, who went by Sicktanic, who had started SKR, or Serial Killer Records, with his girlfriend, Razakel, in Apple Valley. Razakel later commented about how shy he was, saying she'd have to call him out.
But despite being shy, Richard, who was now strictly going by Sam, really hit it off with Sicktanic and Razakel, and they became quite good friends.
Sam started a YouTube channel called Little Demon Dog that's still up, and you can go on there and watch him, Sicktanic, and Razakel hanging out. They're super goofy, silly, awkward misfits. They seem like typical goth Southern California kids, laughing and smoking weed and being dorks.
Then, through MySpace, Richard's Syko Sam found love. He met a girl who lived across the country in Farmville, Virginia, also obsessed with horrorcore, who'd steal his heart and change his life forever. A girl named Emma Niederbrock.
Chapter 3. Emma.
Why does it sound like I feel like a stranger? It's like I'm surprised by the good things in life. Funny how you clear out all the noise in my head.
Emma was born on October 15th, 1992 in Farmville, Virginia. Her father was a reverend and head of Walker's Presbyterian Church in neighboring Hicksburg, and her mother was a criminal justice and sociology professor at Longwood University.
Emma was an only child, and the family lived in a good neighborhood in a large colonial home. Very wholesome.
Emma's parents dedicated their lives to her. She was homeschooled. But because of this, she didn't have many friends. She was sequestered, cut off from the world, and she felt very isolated and grew depressed. She wanted to branch out and to rebel against her ultra-conservative, religious parents.
And so, she found horrorcore.
She somehow discovered Ragdoll, whose MySpace page featured a crowned female demon holding a fetus in one hand and a severed head on a pike in the other. And Emma became a huge fan of Ragdoll, which, if you're into horrorcore music, it's pretty good. I was going to ask for permission to put some of her songs in this episode, but I figured she was probably just sick of people bugging her about all this shit and decided I'd just leave her alone. But her music's easy to find. It's on Spotify and all the other places. I guess I'll probably put a link up in the show notes if you want to hear it.
That sounds cool. I want to hear it. Emma went all horrorcore. She dyed her hair hot pink, started wearing all black, smoking clove cigarettes, which rattled her parents so deeply that they started attending family counseling. And it only grew worse when Mark and Deborah decided to separate. Mark moving out of the family home and leaving Emma and Deborah there to live together.
With her father gone, Emma went into full-on crazy rebel mode, scrawling things on the wall like,
"Kill the fetus! Fuck your Jesus! I'd rather be dead, 'cause your faith is meaningless."
I'm sure her religious parents loved that.
At this point, Emma, who called herself Ragdoll on MySpace, had gotten pretty close with Ragdoll, the two messaging each other all the time.
As Ragdoll says,
"We both liked the same stuff, like photography and makeup and doing hair and all that. And we both loved the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and Slipknot."
Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and Slipknot. That is some eclectic mix there, I tell you. But they also bonded because they were both daughters of Presbyterian ministers. Ragdoll sang,
"I always had an idea that she was brought up strict. I was brought up strict, and so I thought I could relate with her because I know how it goes, and I messed up a lot, and I didn't want to see her go down that same path, and so I was there for her."
One day, Ragdoll tells Emma, "You know, I got a horrorcore friend who lives pretty close to you in West Virginia. Her name is Melanie." And she hooks Emma up with this girl, Melanie Wells.
Perfect.
Melanie Wells, who went by Miss Free Abortions on MySpace, was an 18-year-old high school dropout working on getting her GED, who listed her interests as cigarettes, alcohol, lust, blood and gore, and open graves.
And Melanie, or Ms. Free Abortions, had a poem on her homepage, which read,
"You're screaming and bleeding, lying on the floor. I can't help it, I'm making for more gore. Slowly I make an incision in your main artery. I feel the blood gush all over my body. It's going deeper and deeper. Your life is slowly fading. Your eyes roll back and your body starts shaking."
She rhymed artery with body. I guess that works. That's interesting.
Artery?
Yeah, and body.
Yeah, that's weak.
It is? I don't know.
Fading and shaking is weak, too.
Oh, she's just an 18-year-old horrorcore girl. Give her a break.
I don't know. I'm not giving her a break. My daughter likes to rap battle me, and she's 5. And the other day, she hit me with a rap battle in which she rhymed Europe with syrup and shit, what was the other really good one? Fuck, now I forget. But yeah, she's 5 and she's hitting me with better rhymes than artery and body.
Damn, I didn't know you guys rap battled.
Yeah, she's hilarious. Right now, if you ask her what she wants to be when she grows up, she says a rapper.
What type of music? Who does she listen to?
She likes anything that my husband and I will play for her. I mean, she's very like good and sweet and well behaved, so you can play her stuff with swears in it, and she like doesn't repeat it or anything. But she also found we recalled that YouTube series from forever ago, the Epic Rap Battles of History. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
So we like played her those with people in it that she would know. So like she loves the Stephen King versus Edgar Allan Poe. She loves Dorothy versus Alice in Wonderland. She loves Godzilla versus King Kong. It's hilarious. She's funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so no, I ain't giving Melanie any wiggle room on artery versus body.
I don't know. I kind of like it. I don't know. I'm easy. I'm a pushover.
I mean, the vibe is there. It's dark, man. I'll give her that.
Yeah. Well, as Razikel would later say, Melanie and Emma, or Mrs. Free Abortions and Ragdoll, they became inseparable. And in the summer of 2008, all 3 of them met up at the Underground United concert in Chicago.
Perfect.
Then Melanie and Emma started a promotion team for Razikel's music called the Unholy Apostles.
The Unholy Apostles. You gotta love it, man, right? It's like the Misfits Fiend Club way back in the day when no one knew who they were. I don't know, whatever.
Meanwhile, old Richard, aka Syko Sam, is now a promoter for the Serial Killer Records label and designing them a website and doing graphics for them. So he starts talking to Emma, or Ragdoll, on MySpace, and they really hit it off.
Emma was impressed. At that point, she was only 15, and he was 19, which at that tender age seems so old and mature to her. You know, and he's this California guy who's traveling all over and seeing all these horrorcore shows. He seems to know everybody. He's doing web design and graphics for her favorite band. And Emma starts sending him messages, starts telling him she loves him. And for Richard, this is the first time any girl has ever shown any interest in him whatsoever, much less told him she loved him. Ragdoll and Syko Sam. Together forever.
But Razikel says that Sam was taking it far more seriously than it was, that Emma never called him her boyfriend or said they had any kind of serious relationship. She just thought he was really cool and loved his music and artwork. In her words, they were close and getting closer.
But for Sam, Ragdoll was his girlfriend now. And for over a year, they talked multiple times a day, sending each other pictures and videos and weird, gory poetry. They talked about how depressing it was that their parents had broken up and how they found solace in horror and gothy stuff. And eventually they decided that they should all meet up at the Strictly for the Wicked Music Festival in Michigan on September 12th, 2009.
Chapter 4. Strictly for the Wicked.
Danger, danger. Danger, danger. Danger, danger. Danger, danger, danger. Wanna stop in the beam. How about give me that? Give me them good vibes, yeah, and you might get it back. Manifest anything, oh look at that. No cap, no snap back. It's a new era, got that balance. like a Libra. Never been a diva, never wanna look back either. Focus on the future, focus on the ether, focus on the good time, lyrical. Complex like a spider's web deeper. Jump on the decks, that might will get eat up. Strong flows and make your mind weaker. Mash up the set, then go put my feet up. Complex like a spider's web deeper. Jump on the decks, that might will get eat up. Strong flows and make your mind weaker. Mash up the set, then go put my...
The Strictly for the Wicked Festival was going to be the horrorcore event. 25 bands, organized by and headlining Ragdoll.
And as the founding members of the Unholy Apostles, Ragdoll's fan club, Emma and Melanie, or Ragdoll and Miss Free Abortions, are going to be special guests, get in free, get to go backstage, and Syko Sam is going to be there. This cool California web designer and rapper that she's so into.
There was only one problem. Emma's parents absolutely despised horrorcore, and there was no way they were letting their 16-year-old daughter run off to Detroit, nearly 650 miles away, with all these insane clown people.
So Emma pitches an absolute fit. She's telling them she hates them, that she hates life, that horrorcore is the only thing that makes her happy, that they don't get her, they don't understand her, they don't love her. If they loved her, they'd let her go to the Strictly for the Wicked festival.
And it worked. They agreed to let her go, but under some very strict conditions.
First, Mark and Deborah would chaperone the concert, drive them there, drop them off, and pick them up immediately after it was over. And if Richard and Melanie wanted to come, they would have to stay under their supervision. They'd pick Richard up at the airport, get a hotel together the night of the show, and then they'd drive back and stay at Deborah's house.
With everyone in agreement, Richard Syko Sam bought a plane ticket to Virginia, and Melanie had her dad drive her up from West Virginia to Emma's parents' house.
Emma was over the moon, writing on Richard's MySpace wall. The next time you check your MySpace, you'll be at my house. I love you so, so much, baby, forever and always. You are my one and only everything. I can't wait to see you, baby. It's like 6:17 a.m., and I've been here since 4-ish, filled with uber amounts of excitement. I can't wait. I leave to pick you up in 5 hours. Gah! My insides feel all squishy.
So the next day, Melanie and Emma's parents loaded up the car, gassed up for a long road trip, and drove to the Richmond airport to pick up Syko Sam Richard.
Oh, man. Who knows what Emma was expecting? But when shy, chubby, weird Richard came bumbling over to meet his true love, immediately Emma was put off.
Not only did he not have the swagger and cool kid California confidence that she was expecting of a horrorcore rapper, but he looked very different than he had in his online photos, where he'd try to hide his heaviness with baggy black clothing, and in his videos, he'd always shoot himself in the shadows.
He was immature, goofy, and awkward, which honestly was very obvious from his online videos. And she texted Ragdoll that he made her feel uncomfortable.
And he really did have one terrible haircut. I don't know. He pretty much looks exactly like Ugsley from the Addams Family. The same haircut and everything. Only Richard was a ginger.
But there was no going back, and they all piled into the family car, and from the airport, they drove 630 miles to Detroit, where they checked into a hotel. Mark stayed in his own room. Emma, Melanie, and Deborah stayed in a room, Emma putting dreadfalls in Melanie's hair, and Richard stayed in his own room, alone and moping.
The next day, they went to the festival, and Emma immediately just ghosted Richard, ran off with Melanie, and left him on his own. And I don't know, but he was good friends with the festival's organizers. Satanic the Soulless was like his buddy. They'd hang out. And he was doing web design for Serial Killer Records. So he should have just been working it, flaunting his connects. But instead, just became morose, shy, awkward, and weird.
At some point during the concert, Richard tracked down Emma and managed to grab her phone and see she was texting with a guy she'd hooked up with at the show. And the guy was telling her how much he was into her and how hot she was. And Richard just sunk into an utter pit of jealousy and despair.
And Emma was pissed that he had looked on her phone and was invading her privacy. And now all of Richard's dreams were ruined. The only girl who had ever shown any interest in him was totally over it.
After the show, Emma's parents picked them up, and it was 9 hours back to Farmville, Virginia. God, that just doesn't seem worth it. I'm old. I'm sure when I was 20 or 17 or whatever it would have been, but now I'm like, oh my God.
I thought I was like the best dad in the world for taking my daughter to see the Stray Kids concert movie. That was just a movie.
Yeah.
And you into the Stray Kids?
No, I know a lot of people that are. What? So there was a movie?
Yeah, it was like a concert movie, and it was like they only showed it for like a limited time in certain movie theaters. And, yeah, one of those things. And I took her. I'm going to be on. And then I'm like, all right, I'm being. No one else in the family would go. They were like, "This is you. You know, you're on." And I'm sitting there, and I don't know. The music's fine, I guess. I wasn't too terribly into it, and she wouldn't even sit with me. She went and sat with her friends, and she's like, "You go sit on the end of the aisle."
Oh my God, knife to the heart.
So I went into the lobby and just read a book.
Nah, not a bad idea.
But you know, driving all that distance, it's got to show. Like Mark and Deborah, they really loved her. You know,
I know. Ugh. Well, they got back to Virginia late, and Mark dropped them all off at Deborah's nice house on 505 First Avenue, where they all went to bed.
Chapter 5. The Murders. It was now September 14th, 2009, at 2:43 in the morning. Emma and Deborah were sleeping soundly in their bedrooms, and Melanie lay on the sofa in the living room, staring at her phone and posting on MySpace.
Strictly for the Wicked was fucking amazing. Back in Virginia now. Be back in West Virginia on Wednesday. I miss everyone. Mood. Having a blast.
Then she pulled the blanket up around her and, exhausted, fell asleep.
At the same time, Richard, who'd eaten some painkillers, was outside drinking some beers he'd managed to sneak from the refrigerator and smoking weed he'd brought from California, when he noticed a wood-splitting maul, a heavy type of axe embedded in a stump. He picked it up, hefting the weight.
He had a thing for hatchets and axes because of the ICP logo. He often posed with them and was actually wearing a Hatchet Man necklace.
And here in the moonlight, we see it. Life imitating art. All the songs of killing, of guts and gore and murder, throbbing in Richard's head. Something happened. He became his horrorcore persona. He became Syko Sam, a slimy, overweight introvert with antisocial personality disorder, just like his disgusting hero, David Berkowitz, the son of Sam. a psychopath devoid of the empathy, love, and compassion that makes one a decent human being.
Richard walked into the house with a heavy maul over his shoulder, shuffled through the darkness to the couch where Melanie lies sleeping. And what had she done to deserve his wrath? Nothing, really. She was just a teenage girl who wanted to see a concert with her friends.
What, if anything, ran through his head as he lifted the wood-splitting axe up over his head and brought it crashing down into her skull, knocking her into unconsciousness and death? We'll never really know.
Richard continued pounding the axe into Melanie, blood and bones spraying up, drenching his clothes, striking her again and again until she was unrecognizable. The 18-year-old girl with her entire life ahead of her, never even making a sound in the big house. Emma and Deborah sleeping peacefully through it all.
Guided by the moonlight streaming through the windows, Richard Syko Sam then proceeds upstairs, careful not to make a sound on the creaky steps, the mall dripping blood, and slowly he eases the door to Deborah's bedroom open. Sees her sleeping there, the mother of the love of his life, who'd opened up her home to him, fed him, drove him hundreds of miles to see his beloved horrorcore music.
Richard then embedded the axe into her head, wrenched it free, and struck again and again and again. She, too, never made a sound.
And now, lastly, to the bedroom of his true love, Ragdoll Emma, her room decorated in the posters of the music he loved so much, including images of his own friends, Razakel and Siktanic.
Does he contemplate for a moment not killing her? Of somehow trying to convince her to maybe run away with him, like Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate back in 1958, living a true romance of natural-born killers on the run? Well, who the fuck knows?
Richard then sunk the axe blade into Emma's chest, and when her eyes sprung open and she gulped her last breath of air, he pulled it free and slammed the blade into her face.
True blue millennial, Richard then immediately goes to his phone to record a video for the internet.
He hits record, looking into the tiny camera lens, and says,
"All right, I'm making this video because my breath is taken by what I've done, and I apologize. I know I have to pay the consequences. You know, I wish I could have not done this. I just lost my mind. I snapped and did what I did, and I gotta pay for it now. To anybody who finds this, tell my parents I love them. Fuck you to the big world. Fuck everybody in the world. I can't stand this place."
But despite claiming to be sorry for what he'd done, Richard Syko Sam would kill yet again.
Chapter 6, The Morning After.
The next morning, Melanie's mom, Kathleen, calls, and Melanie doesn't answer.
So, Kathleen waits and calls again. Still no answer. Then Melanie's brother calls, and she doesn't answer. All of which was very weird because Melanie was attached to her phone and always answered. They try Emma's phone. Again, no answer. So they call the house's landline. No answer.
Worried, Kathleen calls Razakel, who says they're probably just out. Maybe her phone died or something.
On the next day, on September 17th, Melanie's father drives the 2 hours from West Virginia to Farmville and knocks on the door at 11 a.m. No one answers. So he waits and waits and waits, and he ends up sitting there waiting for 8 hours.
Eventually, Richard sneaks out the back door, then swings around through the backyard and actually approaches him and tells him he's a neighbor and that the girls have gone out for the day and were going to be back that night. And Melanie's father believes him and heads back to West Virginia.
Kathleen then again calls Razikel, who admits, yeah, it's weird. At first, Razikel thought that maybe Richard, Emma, and Melanie had ran away together. But that didn't really make any sense. And she began to grow worried.
The next day, Kathleen, after calling and calling and calling, finally hears Richard pick up the landline at the house. He tells her that Melanie and Emma went to the movies, but should be back any minute. Which makes no sense. How fucking long is the movie?
So Kathleen then calls Emma's dad, Mark, and asks him if he's seen the girls. And he says no, not since he dropped them all off at the house 2 days ago. Kathleen later said she could hear the worry in his voice as he told her he'd go over to the house and see what was going on there.
Mark goes to the house, which had once been his home. As we mentioned, he'd moved out when he and Deborah split up. And he has the key, and after knocking, unlocks the door and walks in, calling out for Emma and Deborah, stopping in his tracks when he sees Melanie's mutilated body on the sofa and a massive puddle of blood.
And that's when Richard Syko Sam strikes. Having heard the knocking, he'd taken the axe and hid, and he now came up from behind, slamming the axe into the back of Mark's head. When Mark falls to the ground, Richard continues striking him over and over, destroying the hardwood floor beneath him.
Now, it's getting really weird for Melanie's parents. Where the hell was Mark? He said he'd call them right back when he figured out what was going on. So they call the Farmville police and ask for a welfare check.
An officer comes to the house, and boldly, with that psychopath confidence, Richard answers the door, all smiles, and tells the officer that Emma and Melanie were at the movies, and they'd be back soon, explaining that the girls had gone to Richmond the night before, and their car had broke down, and that Melanie isn't responding because her phone stopped working.
Everything's seemingly in order. The officer then goes on his way, not realizing the slaughter that lay just beyond the door.
It's now been 3 days since the concert, and Melanie's parents are freaking the fuck out now, and they demand that police go back to the house. So they do. Again, Richard answers and says, everyone's at the movies. And again, they leave, never entering the house, failing to notice the smell of blood and the putrid odor of death as the corpses begin to rot, even though the neighbors all say that they smelled it, wondered where the horrible smell was coming from, and assumed it must have been a dead deer somewhere.
I can't believe the police didn't think it, they didn't know whose house it was, that it was a woman and her daughter, who's the strange
guy
weirdo
covered in blood.
Right, what? Melanie's mom, Kathleen, is just calling and calling and calling at this point, and again, Richard answers, and now it gets even weirder.
Richard tells her he doesn't know where Mark is, but there are strange noises coming from the basement, and he's scared. So Kathleen tells him, we'll call 911. And he does.
911, what's your emergency?
Hey, could I have a police unit come by my house? Because I keep hearing noises and sounds coming from the basement, and I'm scared to go down there and check what it is.
Okay, and what's your name?
My name's Sam. This is my girlfriend's house, 505 First Avenue.
Okay, we'll send an officer right out.
So again, an officer comes out, and Richard directs him to go around the house to the basement side door and lets him in there. And together they search the basement. And then the officer leaves. Fucking crazy, dude.
Oh my God. Richard calls his family back in California and leaves a voicemail telling them he loves them. His sister later hears it and thinks it's weird because he was never one to express love to them before.
Richard moves the bodies around, dragging Mark and Melanie into Emma's room and posing them on the bed. Then he makes another video, alluding to suicide, saying, "All right, so I'm making this video because it's in my final minutes of being alive. To anybody that finds this, I want you to tell my parents that I love them deeply and I'm sorry for doing this. To my brother, Sinister, aka Eric, and Emily, I love you guys deeply. And I'm sorry for going this route. I know I said I'd turn myself in, but I'm not gonna do that. I can't do that. I can't pay those consequences. So I gotta do what I gotta do, which is gonna be over there, if you can see that."
He then turns the camera to face the stairs, where what appears to be a noose hangs down, then continues talking, saying,
"So my last words before I go. Fuck you to the world. Fuck everybody in it. I can't stand this place. Fuck your God. And no, I'm not a nut rider. SKR, wicked intent for life. Peace."
How far Richard went in a suicide attempt is not known, but he did not kill himself. Instead, at 4 a.m, he took $200 from Mark's wallet and the keys to his 2000 Honda and drove off into the coming dawn. Chapter 6. Capture.
On September 18th, 2009, 5 days after the murders, Melanie's mother finally harassed the Farmville police enough that they agreed to go back yet again and recheck the house. But this time, they noticed the smell of death immediately, before they even swung open the unlocked door and saw the slaughter inside.
Bumbling idiot Richard Syko Sam, meanwhile, had crashed Mark's Honda into a ditch, and as he sat there wondering what to do next, a sheriff's deputy pulled up behind him.
All friendly smiles and psychopath charm, Richard told the deputy his name was Sam and explained that he had borrowed the car from his girlfriend's dad. And the deputy, well, despite Richard being covered in dried blood and absolutely reeking of death, the deputy just gave him a citation for driving without a license and called him a tow truck.
The tow truck driver showed up and offered to give Richard a ride, and Richard accepted, asking to be taken to the nearest convenience store. The driver immediately noticed Richard had red marks covering his neck, and when he asked about it, Richard told him they were hickeys from his girlfriend.
Fucking wishes. Now, I haven't been able to confirm this, and I don't know if it's certain, but I suspect that he did, in fact, attempt to hang himself, probably very half-heartedly, and that these red bruises were from the noose. I don't know, who knows?
The tow truck dropped Richard off at a convenience store around 6 a.m., and when police spoke to the driver, he said Richard, quote, stunk like the devil, and he had to drive with his head out the window to stop from gagging.
Richard then hailed a cab to take him to the Richmond International Airport, and in another weird twist, police actually pulled over the taxi cab for speeding, with Richard in the back. And Richard just calmly got out and smoked a cigarette while the cab driver and cop talked it out, then calmly got back in the cab and went to the airport.
His flight didn't leave until the next day, and he tried to get an earlier plane but didn't have the money, so he just holed up in an empty section of the baggage department, wrapping himself up like a mummy in his oversized black hoodie.
He then called his friend Big Dog and told him what he had done.
Big Dog then told Razakel, who told Sicktanic, the soulless, and Sicktanic, horrified and disgusted by what his friend had done, called Farmville police and told them Richard confessed to killing the family. In response, police spread pictures of Richard across Virginia.
And it was Sicktanic who called Kathleen and told her the devastating news that Richard had confessed to killing her daughter. He says, to this day, he can still hear the horrible scream she let out.
At 11:30 a.m. on September 19, 2009, airport security spotted Richard sleeping in the baggage claim area and immediately recognized him from the pictures the police were circulating.
A team of police officers calmly approached him, asked him for ID, patted him down, and led him away. He went willingly, without a fight, completely docile.
He was taken to a back room in the airport where detectives attempted to interrogate him, but he said he wished to remain silent and have a lawyer.
The only smart thing he ever did.
By the time police were escorting him to the station, reporters had been tipped off and surrounded the station, asking him why he'd done it, to which he said,
Jesus told me to do it.
Chapter 7. Afterwards.
Surely I'm catching on to something, purely mashing buttons, rashly crashing systems, boorish in their wisdom, fascist in their visions, thrashing all the pistons in trashy whining engines.
The prosecutors charged Richard with first-degree murder, robbery, and grand larceny, but later changed the charges to 6 counts of capital murder. Apparently, they thought he was also guilty of 2 other murders somehow, but those 2 murder charges were later dropped, and I was never able to figure out what the hell was up with all that.
Police stuck him in the Piedmont Regional Jail on suicide watch. The guards stripped Richard naked and dressed him in a quilted smock made of tear-resistant, thick material, and he wasn't allowed a fork or knife and had to eat his meals with his hands.
Richard then, finally, confessed to it all and accepted a plea deal, exchanging 4 guilty pleas for life in prison to avoid the death penalty.
Everyone who knew him was shocked. His sister said she fell to her knees and wept and felt guilty herself.
Razikel said,
"This sounds kind of messed up, but to me, it makes more sense if some random person would have broken into that house and did all that before it makes sense with Sam. You could push over this kid and walk all over him."
And to those who blamed horrorcore music for the murders, Razikel said,
"Our music wasn't playing in his ears when he bludgeoned 4 people. He did that on his own. We rap about it and it finally happens. It should be like a slap in our face, right? Well, no. Shit happens."
While Razikel said she had no feelings of personal guilt, she'd never make music about those killings, as she thought it would be disrespectful to her friends, and said people should not assume that she is unfeeling, saying,
"We rap about some ugly, evil stuff. That doesn't mean we're not human."
Richard was given 4 life sentences and waived his right to appeal. And while walking to his prison transport van, he actually smiled. I suppose he was happy because Virginia executed more people than any other state besides Texas. But the joke was on him because Virginia abolished the death penalty in 2021.
Richard has spent time in several prisons, including Wallens Ridge State Prison and Indian Creek Prison. And in 2019, one of Richard's former cellmates, named Pee-wee, gave an interview describing life locked in a cell with him.
Pee-wee says Richard introduced himself as Syko Sam. He said he was gumpy and weak looking, and that the other prisoners didn't like him, harassed him, and took advantage of him. Whatever that might mean, I don't know. Because they thought his crime was weak, that he'd killed teenage girls who were sleeping.
But Pee-wee says that Richard seems truly remorseful and that his parting words of wisdom were, "Life is too short to make impulsive decisions that ruin your life." Your life. Fucking piece of shit.
But Richard gave an interview with the website Serial Killers, Inc., where he didn't really seem that remorseful at all, kind of did some victim blaming. When asked about his motivation, he said, quote, "It was not premeditated. I was just a ticking time bomb waiting to detonate. And all those lies and deceits caused me to explode sooner than I wanted to."
And as for Razikel, she's still at it, making horrorcore music. Her Facebook page has 65,000 followers.
She's even got her own online store, which sells everything from hot sauce called Shrunken Head Trauma, which is made with kiwis and serrano peppers, which honestly sounds fucking delicious. I'm tempted to buy some of that hot sauce, I tell you. To designer nails and pins, patches, t-shirts, and, all kinds of horrorcore merch.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Richard Alden McCroskey, Syko Sam, the Myspace Killer. Thank you so much for listening.
And do you want to have a rap battle with Christa? Let us know at murdercoasterpodcast@gmail.com. You got a case you want us to cover or whatever you want to say hi, let us know. murdercoasterpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.